Hello and welcome to Delmi Training Institute's DTIL 101 Introduction to Network Cabling, and this is lab number 7A. So in this lab we're going to learn how to terminate onto an unloaded or a modular patch panel. It's a very interesting lab because it gives us the knowledge of how to be able to terminate onto this patch panel using different types of components, as we saw in lab number 7. So in lab number 7 we did realize that we were able to use and terminate using different components. So we could have an HDMI, different colored jacks, audio devices, BNC, etc. that you populate onto this. So how do you do that using twisted pair cable? Let's look at what the objective for this lab entails. So we are going to use either a punch down tool or crimp tool to terminate different categories of 8-pin, 8 connectors, 8P, 8C jacks, and we are going to end up populating these patch panels with these. And we are able to use either the 568A wiring scheme or the 568B. Well, let's look at the material that we are going to need for this. So obviously we are going to need the category of cables that we're going to use. So in this lab, the cables that we're using are category 6 unshielded twisted pair cables, and I have a bundle here of 12. Ideally, I always like to use Velcro to bundle them, but in this lab you can see that I put some zip ties on it because I want to take off the Velcros. It's not really doing well with my table mat. The Velcro just keeps catching onto this and makes it very difficult for me to work. So in this case, I put some zip ties so I'll be able to take these Velcros off. But ideally, anytime my cables come into the server room, that's how I like to dress them, with Velcro. We also need either the 110 punch tool. So here I have different 110 punch down tools. So one from Klein and one from Fluke. I mean, you can use all these. These are impact tools, meaning that when you punch down, it impacts onto that. So you can either use any of these. You also need a 12 or 24 port unloaded or modular patch panel. So here I have a 24 port modular patch panel. So it goes all the way from 1 to 24. But this patch panel that I'm using, this modular patch panel that I'm using, has the cable support. And I'm using this one because I want to show you how to dress your cables using the cable support. So this is my 24 port modular patch panel. And what I'm also going to need is the jacks that are going to go with it. In this lab, we're using category 6 jacks because the cables we're using are category 6 cables, and we are going to end up terminating them here using the specified wiring scheme that we want to go with. So we're going to learn how to follow that wiring scheme and terminate on 12 of these and populate the patch panel. We need a permanent marker because we need to make some changes and write on some of the cables as and when we terminate them. So that is what we are using. This brand is a Sharpie brand, and we also going to need some cable strippers. So unshielded twisted pair cable stripper, we could either use this. This is one from Fluke that we've always used in other videos, and we could also use in its place an electrician scissors or a lineman scissors. This is what we have, so we're going to use that or this one. Also, we are going to need a cable tester, right? Because once we terminate both ends, we would have to be able to test it. And in addition to that, we need patch cords or patch cables that have been tested and known that they are working. They should be straight through. Like when I talk straight through, what I mean is pin number 1 on the left should match pin number 1 on the left on the side. So pin number 1 on the left should match pin number 1 on the right. That's just what I mean, straight through. And then I'm going to need some Velcro or zip ties. Well, let's get started onto how we are able to terminate this and learn a little bit about the tricks of the trade and how to terminate this properly. So this modular panel that I have is made by Cable Matters, as if it matters. Here they did put a category 6, but we've learned from lab number 7 that it really doesn't matter. You are able to populate it with different jacks as seen here. So it could be different colors. This is from Belden, different ones. You could also put in an HDMI, some coax, coaxial with the F, BNC for audio. You have the F connectors, etc, etc. You could even put some speakers. So it really doesn't have to be only category 6 patch that's going to go on it. Well, so this is my bundle of cables. I have 12 as a bundle, and this simulates the cables that you've pulled out from the field, from the individual user ends, that's what I mean by the field, to the server room. So obviously when you're pulling it, we learned that from lab number 2 that most of the cables have to be uneven, and just to make sure that it's tapered to be able to be pulled properly. And once you come, you're going to cut off all the excess because of all that. Well, my cables come, or the cables come already labeled, as you can see here. So there are 2 ways that these can be done. Either your cables are coming from the left side of your patch panel. So you have your cabinet. The cables could either come from here and make their way to the right like this. So this is what I mean. You have your panel and your cables are coming from the left and they have to make their way here. Right, when that happens, you're going to dress your cables, and since port number 1 is to my left, I'm going to look for cable number 1, and then I'm going to terminate all the way to cable number 24 or 12, depending on what I'm doing. Also, we could have scenarios where the cable is coming from the right, like this. Okay, so the cable is coming all the way from the right and going. So from number 24, that's where the cable is coming from, all the way to number 1. I've seen students make a lot of mistakes when they're terminating because the cables have already been dressed down, the cables are nicely bundled. You don't want to mess up the dressing that you have done. So the first step to a successful termination is to make sure that the entire cable, or the shortest of your cable, in this case this is my shortest out of the lot, exceeds the end of that panel. And once you exceed it, depending on the distance between the cable support and modular panel, extend it beyond that, right? So I'm going to get my cable and I'm going to lay it on top like this. Bear in mind that my cables are coming from port number 24 all the way to port number 1. So this is what I'm going to do. So as they extend, I have enough that is coming out from here. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab zip tie and I'm going to secure this to the cable support. That's what I'm going to do on this end, right? And then I'm going to work my way down. So that's the first thing I'm doing, just secure it like this. This is all temporal. Now I'm going to end up cutting this bundle that I have here because we're going to see why. Remember that my cables, they come already numbered. So that is what I'm going to be doing here. So I'm going to start looking for the cable numbers. This is number 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find number 2, and on here I'm going to look for the corresponding number and I'm going to feed the cable in just like that. So I'm going to look for the next one. This is cable number 1, and I'm going to take that and feed it through slot number 1. I'm going to do that till I fill up all 12. So number 4 would feed into number 4. Again, notice how number 3 is going, but if I decided to go above, I'm going to have my cables all jammed up. So I'm just going to lift this one and try and route the cable properly so that I can feed it into number 3, as you can see from here. Well, so that is the first step of what I'm doing. I have been able to route the cables in like this. Don't worry about any of the mess. This is where the cleanup starts to come in. At this point, baby ties, like smaller zip ties. Like I like to use these smaller zip ties. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to organize all the cables onto the cable support like that, right? And at this point, this is where I'm going to try and dress them as nicely as I can. I like to do them in bundles of 2. So I take the first 2 that are like this, obviously making sure that your cables are well dressed. So I take these 2. See how I have a nice bend coming in here? So I'll take that, I'm just going to feed it through, and I'll zip it and secure that in place. Well, that's what I've done for this. And next, I'm going to take the next 2. So the next 2 is going to be like that, and I'm going to add it to the existing 2 that I had coming. At the same time that I'm doing that, I am dressing it. So this is what I have. I took the next set of 2 and I did bundle them, and I'm going to zip them right here. Right, I like to zip them where the bend is. All right, so that's my next 2. Now I'm going to take the next set of 2 again, and I'm going to put them together like that, right? And now I'm going to add that set of 2 to the existing 4 cables that were there. And when I'm doing that, I am dressing them. So I'm going to take the baby tie again, and that's just what I'm going to do. I'm just going to zip it again and keep working my way down. Right, now you see how all the excess cables are coming out. If you don't go through this process and you just measure your cables like that without doing this, once you finish terminating, you're going to have this whole amount of cable here that you have to shove somewhere, and you end up feeding it back and messes up all your cable dressing. So you want to make sure that your cables are dressed properly like this, and you can cut off all the slack once you're done. So I just keep going. I take the next 2 cables and do the exact same thing. So now let's look at this cable, especially this one. I see how it just comes over like this. Probably I could pull that out and reroute it to go underneath here. If I could route it here, yeah, that makes it much more cleaner and better, right? So this is going to go like that. I could take this one out and I could feed it through. That was number 10, right? So this is what I'm going to get here. So I could just take the last 2, zip it up here properly like that, grab another set of zip ties. As and when you bundle the cables, you notice that the baby ties, it's not going to be long enough but this is just all temporal. And then the last one that I'm going to do is going to be this one, so I can just slide. So pretty much this is what I have now. It's very important and critical for me to make sure that the cables have been dressed up properly. This is where you make your cables look better. So there you go. So now that I have all my cables here, ideally I have to support these ones a little bit better. It might look like you're using a lot of zip ties, but you're doing a few things. You're trying to minimize crosstalk, you're trying to dress your cables properly and make it look nice. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to look at these numbers and I'm going to relabel my cables. So on this, I'm just going to write the cable numbers. They're important, I'm going to need them. Notice that I want to be able to write the cables, the numbers on the cables far away from here. So I can do 1-1-, then I can put 2-2 here, and I can put 3, and just label them. Right, you could also print using a label maker and wrap them around here. Most of the cable manufacturers do not like this to be used on their cables, like permanent markers, because it could void the warranty. They don't know what type of chemicals are in there that could interfere with the cable jacket, and then it could damage it. So most manufacturers recommend you use wrappers to wrap against the cable instead of using these ones. All right, so 7-7. Well, notice at this point, you see this one, how it's bending? They all go and take a nice shape. So this one, I'd want to have it done properly. Like I said, this is where you have to dress all your cables. You don't have a second chance on this. So here, I want the bend to be pretty much the same. So I just have to make that correction here before I even attempt to terminate any of the cables. All right, so here, probably this one, I can work with that. So this is what I have here. So once that is done, remember I'm going to take these and I'm going to terminate them and populate them from here. This is about 1 inch in the length. This particular jack, it's about 1 inch. So remember, this is going to populate here, which means that that cable, once it goes in, this cable has to end here. Right, so that's one thing I have to take into consideration. Next is I'm going to use the permanent marker, and where all the cables stick out like this, I'm just going to draw a line. I'm just going to do a mark on where they all stick out, just like that. This is very important because it tells me how far the cable sticks out from here. So what I'm going to do is now I can take cable number 1 out, and I know that that is where it sticks out. But at the same time, I know that I need about 1 inch from here. So at this point, when I put this here like that, my jacket has to start from here. So at this point, I'm able to mark here. That is not where I'm going to cut, but that is where I'm going to strip. So by using this, I can do this. So this line, put that in here, just spin it around, and that is where I get to take the jacket off, where that line was. Because now I'm going to terminate it here like this, and once I terminate it, I'm going to fix it into that jack. So since we're going to do the 568A wiring, and from lab number 7, we spoke about the different wiring schemes. Let's take a look at this jack. Again, this jack has both the 568A and B wiring scheme with the color codes. So the 568A starts with a white green, which means the white green is going to go here, solid green here, the white blue here, and the solid blue there. If I wanted to do the 568B, the white orange is what was going to go in here, and the solid orange here, the white blue here, and the solid blue there. Right, that's what it's going to do. If I flip this over, again, it indicates the A wiring scheme with the color codes on top, and below is the B. So on this part of the IDC is going to be the solid orange, white orange goes there, solid brown, and white brown goes here. If I were doing the B, the solid green was going to go in there, white green here, the solid brown here, and the white brown there. Okay. Again, we do know that if we're doing the 568A, pin number 1 is the white green, and pin number 2 is the solid green. Pin number 4 is solid blue, pin number 5 is white blue. And when you flip it, pin number 6 is solid orange, pin number 3 is white orange, so we can follow those numbers again. So now that I've stripped this, I'm going to take out the cable divider, and then I'm going to match the cables based on the IDC that I have. So since we're doing the A, the orange and the brown is going to be on my right. So orange and brown to the right, like that. And when I flip it like this, green and blue to the left. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to let the jacket of the cable just sit at the base like that. And since I'm starting with the orange, just have to make sure that my cables are oriented properly. So I'm starting with the orange, but the solid orange is what is going to come first. So I'm going to keep my thumb on it like this, and I'm going to unravel this. So once I unravel it, I notice how I hold this and I twist it. Whilst I'm doing that, the cable opens up here, and I'm able to slide that down here with my nail of the left. So I pinch that in and I pull that down, and I do the same thing with the brown. So keep this on like that, and unravel. It just opens it up and you slide it in. So I have done that for the right side. I'm going to do the same thing for the left. The blue comes first, followed by the green. So on the blue side, the solid blue is the first cable. So when I pull my cable here, I want to make sure that the blue is the first one, like that, and the green goes next. So again, I line it up. The solid color is what goes in, and that works out like this. That is the first thing that I've done. I could use the punch down tool to do the termination for me, or if you have access to one of these tools, you could also use that. So this cuts everything for me at once. All I just do is take this and insert it in here like that, and then it's going to do the crimping for me. All right, so once it's here like this, I'm just going to trim a little bit of these cables off, because I'm going to end up inserting it into this piece of tool if you have one, and that's going to do the crimping for me. So just by holding it, you want to make sure your cables are well seated into it, and this just fits into that slot like that. Right, this is what I have in, and I'm just going to squeeze. By squeezing, it cuts off all the excess cables on both ends. At the same time, it seats the cables into the jack for me like that. Once this is done, I take the retaining clip that comes with it and I put it on top like that, and it secures the cable in. So once that is done, you could either just populate your panel and keep working your way around. So this just goes in like that and it snaps in. So you see how I've been able to maintain the same nice curve to go in, and that just snapped in here. So I'm going to do the exact same thing for this. Take number 2 out. That is where it is, but I need about an inch from here, because that's where it's going to be. So from the tip, I need another inch. So that's why I'm going to mark first here, and that's why I'm going to strip. So with your cable stripper, you're going to do the exact same thing as we did before. And there you go. Take out the center divider, and you're going to go terminate the exact same way you did. So I'll grab hold of the next jack. I know I'm doing the 568A, so I have the green and the blue to the left and the brown and the orange to the right. Just have to arrange them and continue to do what you were doing. So I'm going to terminate this one the exact same way I did. So that's just what it is. I'm going to cut off some excess from here and take my tool, just slide that in, and it does all the cutting for me. And the retaining clip goes on it. Once it fits on, there you go. I can take this and I can populate it. Try and fill it up, and it clips in. So I have the two nicely terminated, as you can see here. And you just keep doing the exact same thing as you continue. I'm using the lineman scissors this time. Just core onto the cable jacket, break it off. If this is too long, you can also just trim some off. It makes working with it easier. Take out the center divider, blue and green on one side, brown and orange to the other side. Now imagine you trying to do this and trying to use your punch down tool. It's very difficult, so it's going to be challenging. It's not that you cannot do it. Yes, you can do it, but how many of these are you able to do? So let's say I take that and I want to use my punch down tool. So obviously this is a controlled environment, so I have somewhere to put it. If you're working in a live rack, then sometimes you don't have anywhere to put this, and it becomes difficult to use the punch down tool. So let's try it. Here I have to do that and do for each and every one of them. It's time consuming. Just one more punch down and that is it. Right, you could either do it like this. Most importantly, see how the jacket stays in the jack, right? That's what you want to see. You don't want to see the cables, the strands, all the way out. Put a retaining clip on it, but using this takes way longer to do it. So now this one is ready to be populated as well, in like that. And that fits in, right? This fits in here, like that. And then I'm going to do that for this same thing. This goes in like that. You could mark it up right here. That's where you're going to strip. Take that one out. And then I'm just going to strip here. At this point, there is no room for error because you don't have any more cable to play with. So you have to be extra careful when terminating this. I have a lot here, so I'm just going to cut off the excess. I don't need that much. And then again, the cable divider, I'm going to take that out. Right, so just give it a check. There are no damages onto this, and I'm going to do it. Brown and orange to the right, green and blue to the left. Terminate the same way that I've been doing. So at this point, all my cables have been terminated nicely. As you can see, I could use the baby ties to hold them in place. And I'm just going to make sure that I secure this portion of it so I can revert to using the Velcro to try and hold this in place. But like I said, it just keeps getting stuck onto catching the material that I do have. I let that hold it in place like this. My cables are bundled nicely. I can cut off this straw zip tie that I used before. You see how it's left an indent in here. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like to use the zip ties, because with time, it just squishes onto it. I guess I tightened it too hard, but ideally, with any zip tie you put on, should be able to slide freely like this one here. Just slide freely. That way, you haven't put too much. So here, I can go and I don't need all these ones, I can just go and trim off just a few of them. So this can hold this here. I don't need this one here. I can trim that one off, take that one off. I can leave this one. I take that one off like that. I can leave this one here, and then I can take this one off from here, and I can cut off all these extra ties that are here. I did not tighten them. You see how it can roll easily and freely onto this. So all I just want to do is all the sharp ends, even though I try and cut it flush, it could potentially cut someone. So I just wrap them around like that. You see how beautifully this has been terminated here. This is because of the cable support. So I was able to dress all the cables nicely. As you can see, I have all the numbers from number 1 all the way through to number 12. When I flip it upside down, you can also see. At this point, you can do little and minor adjustments as to how you want your cable to look like. From here, just a little bit of arrangement makes your cable spaced out evenly as it's supposed to be. Well, so we did terminate onto this unloaded patch panel as we've seen, but because this one had a cable support, it made the cable termination very easy. Now let's take a look at patch panel, because most of you might run into applications where you would have a patch panel, a modular panel like this one that has no cable support, and that is going to be like this one here. So you're going to buy this patch panel and it has no cable support. So the question is, how are we able to achieve something similar to what we have here? Well, I'm just going to go through briefly and show you the techniques that you'd be able to achieve something comparable to this design here. All right, so first of all, let me put this away and grab one that has this. So again, let's go back to looking at our patch panel that we have numbers from 1 all the way to 24, which obviously means my cable is coming from my right to my left, and I'm going to end up feeding them through. So in this case, because there is no cable support, all I'm just going to start doing is I'm going to start feeding my drops in here, and once I have, I'm going to start putting the cables together. Now my cables have already been numbered, as you can see from here, and I did say that once we're doing it, we got to make sure that the shortest length of the cable exceeds that with some amount of cables left in. So this is where I am starting. That is my cable number 1 here. So number 1, I'm going to feed that in. Going to look for cable number 2. So obviously this is cable number 2. Also going to take that and feed that through. So number 1 in, number 2, look for number 3. 3 is right here. And once you're doing this, you have to be able to arrange the cables in such a way that you have very minimal overlaps. Alright, so this is the first step of getting these done. But once you look here, you notice that all these cables are not organized properly. So what I want to be able to do is I want to determine how much spacing I'm going to have between the patch panel and these wires. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So these are my first 2 cables. Remember, I said we always have to do them in bundles of 2. So I have to play around with the wiring. So this is it's looping over, so it makes sense for me to bring it like this. And this way I'll be able to put my cable number 1 and 2 together. Again, this is the spacing that I want. You're going to use a lot of little baby ties here. So I take these and I put them together like that. Sometimes I'm going to bend the cable a little bit to try and give me angle that I'm looking for. So I'm going to let the cable do most of the work for me. So next I'm going to grab 3 and 4, but as you can see, 3 and 4 is being sandwiched between here. So do I want these ones to come up and go the same way? Yes, that's what I want to do. So that's the 3 and this is my 4. So I'm going to take that. This is number 4. So number 4 is going to go in here like that. Okay, so I have 3 and 4, but it's crisscrossing, so I'd take it underneath it. And then I have 3 and 4 organized like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, and I'm going to bundle them again together here like that. But I'm going to bundle them where the cable is going to bend. So this is what I'm looking at. This is how I'm going to dress it so that I can maintain that same distance that I have and I want to occur here. So once these ones do make their way here, I'm going to hold all 4 together and I'm going to put the baby tie on it. Right, so this is what it is looking at now. And then I'm going to grab the next 2. Obviously it's 5 and 6. So I have to make some rearrangements. So 5 there and 6 here. So again, this is what I'm looking at, 5 and 6. I'm going to grab that, I'm going to zip them again together. You work your way with little increments, and obviously ultimately you're going to achieve what you want to do. So let's see here, and I'm going to put that in here. Right, so again, this is about the spacing that I do want, like that, right? So at this point I can zip this one here also like that. See, I'm doing them in increments of 2. I took the first 2, I took the next 2 and I added it to the previous 2. Now I took the new 2, added them to the previous 4, and I just keep working my way. So now I have these 2 here as well. I can take those, bring them here, and grab another baby tie and tie them together. And again, the next 2, these ones, as you can see, 12 overlaps. So I could be in a good position to take this one and probably, let's see how best to arrange that, because I don't really like the way it sits on here unless I'm able to do these 2 like that, because obviously these cables are going like this. Ultimately, this is what I am dressing it as. So I just have to keep working my way on this. So here I can take these 2 and I can bundle them up here. When you're doing this, ideally, I know guys are going to wonder, why don't you use Velcro but you use these baby ties or you use zip ties? What I've realized is when I'm trying to put cables together, Velcro doesn't give me that leverage. Velcro is good, but it doesn't give me the leverage to secure the cables together during this phase, because Velcro allows the cables to slide freely. But during the design phase or dressing them like this, I don't want the cables to be moving around. So at that point, I want all the cables bundled up nicely together. So now once I get them, remember these cables are moving a little bit more because nothing is fixed. But ideally, if your panel is fixed and your cables are coming all the way down, you would have better control of this. So ideally, this is where I am going to have my cables at before I proceed even with doing anything. So this is how I am going to dress my cables. And from here, I'm going to grab the permanent marker, which in this case I'm using the Sharpie brand, and start numbering all my cables. So I'm going to just retrace the number 1-1-2 4-4, do the number 5 on that, and rename them. Now, once I have all these numbered properly, I can begin to mark the tip of the cables here where I am going to have all my cables. With that in mind, because this is not bound to anything, I can take these cables out because it's loosely, but once I pull them out, I can see that these are all the cable measurements that I did take. So at that point, I know with this, when I'm using these, I can put it here and I know that with each cable, that is how much I'm going to strip the jacket off. So from this, I'm going to get about that. And because I have all the numbers now written on them, I can just terminate all 12 and I have the numbers, and I'll begin to plug them into the patch panel. So I'm just going to do just 2 of these ones. I'm not going to do everything, but I hope you have an idea of what you have to do in situations like that. So let's say I'm just doing the first one. I'm going to strip the cable from here, take the jacket off, center divider out, and using the exact same tools as we were doing one with the cable support, same wiring scheme that I'm going to be following. So then I'm going to use that to just do the quick termination on it. And then once I'm done, plugging these ones in. So this indicates number 1 and that indicates number 2. So just go in, plug that in properly. Number 1 and number 2. All right, so this is going to be the basics of the cable dressing. So once it's all done nicely like that, you're going to have all the cables supported together. That is going to end up mimicking this one. The only problem is this: I have a cable support. The dressing was easier, but this has no cable support. But based on the way I did this, I'm going to be able to mimic that one. Well, so this brings us to the end of how to also terminate using an unloaded or modular patch panel that has no cable support. Well, if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions regarding this tutorial series, drop a comment in the comment section below. My name is Roland, and it was a pleasure walking you through this. I'll see you on the next one.